What was the incident at your school? Junior year. A sophomore boy put a sealed container of chicken noodle soup in an empty locker next to the chemistry room. It sat there for months, easily 5 or 6, until somebody thought about it again. It was brought up in chemistry class, 11th grade, and our chemistry teacher took a pair of tongs to the locker and planned to dispose of it once and for all. His hands were too shaky that day, and as soon as he lifted it out of the locker it fell, spilling the entire cesspool that the chicken noodle soup became. He immediately ran back to his room, screaming, "Oh God! Shut the doors! Shut the doors!" and hilarity ensued. The smell was indescribable. Raw sewage, rotten chicken, fermented noodles all mixed into one. I have never and probably will never smell anything remotely close to it again. The smell permeated the entire floor and even seeped down a stairwell next to the spill to the classrooms immediately below. The day of the disaster, everyone gagged as they traveled through the halls. Luckily it happened during 8th period, last period before we went home. A hazmat team was called to take care of the spill, just in case there were airborne diseases. For the rest of the school year, the teachers lit candles in the hallways and in their classrooms, but the smell never left us. It stayed all summer and even into the next school year until it finally went away altogether. The chemistry teacher who dropped the soup is actually now my stepfather, and we recount this story at least once a year and laugh our asses off. It is one of my best memories of high school. There was a big brawl in our parking lot with a bunch of black kids against a bunch of white kids. It was over drugs. The school went bonkers thinking it was a racist thing. Ya thank Christ it was only drugs, right? Senior prank consisted of dumping month-old fish into the air duct from the roof. They couldn't figure out what was going on at first. School was closed for a week, hazmat was called, and ultimately after the police got involved for vandalism the kids responsible fessed up and got community service hours. Good times. Why do kids always fess up to this stuff? They don't realize that adults aren't infallible yet and assume they'll be caught. This is so true. I remember doing shit when I was a kid and being 100% sure I would get caught eventually even though there was no way for anyone to prove it was me. Someone stole a urinal from one of the boys' bathrooms in high school. All year the principal went on about how if we knew anything we should come forward because we must stop the bathroom bandits. Of course no one came forward because once the bathroom bandits had a name they became legend. I never did find out who they were, but someone found the urinal 3 years later, hidden under some stairs behind the auditorium, a good distance from the bathroom it was taken from. One of the big 180 centimeters plus, tough, students who had a bit of a reputation as a bully and troublemaker decided he was going to try and intimidate one of the art teachers under the mistaken impression that just because Mr. Scott was only 150 centimeters in his socks and about 55 kilograms wringing wet that Mr. Scott would be a pushover. He didn't know that before Mr. Scott trained to be a teacher, Mr. Scott was in the army. And whilst he was in the army Mr. Scott was the divisional weight champion for boxing in Australia. He tried to push Mr. Scott out of the way, and when that didn't work he tried to punch him. Mr. Scott punched him on the jaw and knocked him out. And before anyone says it was wrong, this was 1977, my school still had corporal punishment. Teachers could and did smack you round the head if you were being a dick. You certainly never ever laid a hand on a teacher. Talking back got you the cane or ruler. So that's why this was the biggest incident at my school. Our entire offensive line of the football team came up with the idea to rob a local franchise restaurant in shop class. One of the kids worked there, and the rest came in with airsoft guns, assaulted an elderly man, held their friend up, he was in on it. They took the proceeds, had dinner at Applebee's, and divided up the rest amongst the co-conspirators. They were tracked down easily because they used the kid who had 32 scholarship offers, brand new Denali with chrome rims and custom tinted windows. One went to jail, the others were put on probation, and all the schools rescinded their offers. I was happy because about 2 weeks before this went down they pulled up next to my middle school-aged brother and dumped a 2-liter of orange soda on his head. Oh, and after the cost of dinner, they each got $6 apiece. One day in gym class all the males left gym and went to see this massive shit someone left in the men's room. It was so huge it clogged the toilet itself without the use of any paper. One of the guys tried to flush it, and it seemed to just make a huge suction until thump it all went down in one go. Everyone laughed and returned to gym. Then, it happened again. Basically the same thing. Administrator of our school had an assembly saying that all the boys needed to flush the toilets, and that the hallways smelled like shit. One of the male teachers standing behind me at the assembly said, "You couldn't flush it, it was as big as your arm." Catholic school, female student caught at lunch giving 2 simultaneous hand jobs to 2 male students on either side of her under the lunch table. Caught by cafeteria staff nun. Girl was known as the skier for the duration of her education there. I've always wondered how shit like this happens. Does the girl ask the guys? Vice versa? Do all 3 parties look at each other and just nod knowingly at the same time? The kid managed to put a pencil through his foot in the middle of lunchtime. I was still in line and saw the entire cafeteria stand up and go running towards the windows. He'd apparently been trying to break the pencil by stepping on it, but instead managed to put it through his foot, to the point where it came out the top. There was so much screaming. During my senior year, 2 sophomore girls committed suicide within a few days of each other. It was really unsettling, and the entire school was very quiet for a few weeks. There was also an English teacher that got fired because a student found Norp on his school computer. A girl in our school just disappeared one day. Rumors that she was pregnant, etc. Some glitch in the system had her on the honor roll every semester. They'd call her name in assembly every time. Well, I knew her, she wasn't pregnant, just dropped out, and when I told her her name kept getting called for honors, she thought it would be hilarious to actually show up and collect her gift cards. That was the prize. So she did, with a fake baby in her arms, then spiked the baby on the stage. There was the time where a kid died in the courtyard, after practicing wrestling moves, falling and hitting his head on the bench. As someone who saw him fall, be resuscitated by a teacher, and then die, it was pretty traumatic. That was probably the main incident until a couple of years later when another kid died after getting hit by a car after school. In year 7, we had a storm and the winds were so strong they blew the roof off. We were all evacuated and sent home, and then had 2 or 3 weeks off school after that, and the top floor of the school was blocked off for months. The battle of the sexes. The teacher got fired that day because of what happened. She was supposed to be monitoring recess. I'm not really sure what prompted this, probably nothing, but there was an all-out boys versus girls war. I remember swinging from the handlebars at the top of the slide and kicking a girl in the face. She dropped like 9 feet. Not long after 2 more girls came, each one grabbed one of my legs, and then just hopped off the ladder. I hit my jaw falling down and bit my tongue really bad. Lots of kids, including myself, had to go to the nurse. They canceled school that day and had a meeting with the parents the following week. When I was in high school, we had an outdoor discovery class that was basically just a giant ropes course. The teacher for that class was a nice middle-aged man. One day he decided to take a shower in the locker room between periods and had a stroke. Now I don't know what about this stroke was different, but it made him decide he needed to go for a jog around the high school and middle school, naked as the day he was born. So he's butt naked, sprinting past classroom windows in just his socks and sneakers, which he somehow thought to put on, when a sub goes outside to see what's going on, when the outdoor teacher runs over and basically starts playing a game of catch me if you can, until the ambulance arrives. It was a very odd day, but he was back to work a couple weeks later, making kids swing from ropes and climb over logs like normal. In college, we had the poop bandit. Less one incident and more a string of them. Some of his exploits. 1. Shit in the washers in the men's freshman dorm. They were all top loaders and not many checked them. He'd shit in a random one every couple of weeks. 2. Left pizza boxes in the co-ed dorm common areas with shit in them. Set it up so that it looked like, hey, free pizza. 3. Forced the elevator door open in the co-ed dorm a floor above the elevator and shit on top. It took a week for anyone to figure out why the elevator stank. A literal bomb was dropped in my school playground. We lived in Yuma aside the Air Force Base, and there were constant training and testing exercises. Often they dropped dummy bombs into the proving grounds to practice accuracy. Well, one day a rookie accidentally dropped a dummy into our school playground at 5 in the morning. Military went in to collect it, and realized that some idiot had loaded a real bomb into the plane that morning and what was laying there could have caused quite a crater. School called everyone and said school was cancelled for the day. I'm not too sure what happened to the trainee or the person who loaded the bomb. It's an entertaining story to tell though. Do you have a similar story? Leave a comment and subscribe to the channel if you want to see more videos like this one.